Hello guys, Jerry speaking. Welcome to LJPCBM episode number 1168. Today we acting to the unfortunate Free Purple Rose podcast episode 91. Jared Reddick, Fears and Ferb. One of my least favorite shows from Disney, and it is the worst shows of Disney. And one of the theme songs he ever sang uh Venus for a theme song, and that was the worst song of 104 Days of Summer Vacation. I mean, long story short, before I get to the reaction, okay? It's been horrible. I mean, at least I say horrible. I mean by I never want to see the show ever again, okay? I mean, one time back in 2007 or 2008, I loved the show to death until I have to feel like hating the show now. It's just not my thing. Sorry. Phoenix and Ferb is just not my show anymore. So I just feel like I like the Weekenders, Lloyd in Space, and Recess, any type of show you like. But Phoenix and Ferb, that's garbage talk to me. So anyway, without further ado, let's get to react to the unfortunate reaction to Purple Rose 91, Jared Reddick, Phoenix and Ferb, and I'll get to the reviews and other things in the jokes videos. In the boycott Phoenix and Ferb, beginning in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Oh man, I'm not meaning to do that.
Stinson, and my journey through life has been quite an adventure. For over 20 years, I've played Barney the Dinosaur on tour.
Whoa, that's new.
Seasons of the hugely popular TV show Barney and...
Play that again.
I'm Kerry Stinson, and my journey through life has been quite an adventure. For over 20 years, I've played Barney the Dinosaur on tour, and 7 seasons of the hugely popular TV show Barney and Friends. Now my journey is to bring together friends and guests from all over the entertainment world for inspiring and at times amusing behind-the-scenes conversation.
Wow.
I'm Kerry Stinson, and this is Purple Roads.
Here we go.
Welcome to Purple Roads. My name is Kerry Stinson, and as always, I'm thrilled you're here. This is going to be so much fun. We have, I don't even know where to start with this. Musician, songs, voiceover, I can go on and on and on. And a Texan, which I love. You know I love Texas.
He's a Texan? Dude! Okay. Moving on. Continue on.
So we've got Jared Reddick, Bowling for Soup, Chuck E. Cheese, Phineas and Ferb.
Stupid!
Jared, how are you?
It just goes on and on. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great as well. Yeah, well, that's awesome. I love it. And you got a podcast that we'll talk about?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, as I said, sometimes I'll list everything that I have going on, and it makes my life anxious. But yeah, and I recently built out my website, jaredreddick.com, and even the guy building it was like, okay, is there any more? Like, what's happening here? This is a lot.
Well, it seems like you like to add these things, though.
I like being busy. I don't have really any hobbies. I mean, I'll go out and play golf with my drummer every once in a while, or my father-in-law. But I like to create. I like to work. I like writing songs. I like recording music. I enjoy making people laugh. So, that's where the podcasts come in. And so yeah, I think that it was just what I was put on earth to do is entertain people. And it's, again, I would rather do that than anything else in the world. So, I don't whittle or I don't play racquetball. I just I make up songs and talk like a mouse.
Yeah, he voice mouse, but not good at Phoenix and Ferb. But that's just me. Continue on.
Well, all right. Why don't we start at the beginning in the aspect of how did you just get into the performing? How did you know that was something you wanted to do, and what was the first aspect of performing for you?
Really, it was just I think I've always been a bit of a ham, and I got into stand-up comedy really early, and I kind of thought that that would be my avenue. Um, I really didn't, I didn't really get the fever of wanting to be in front of strangers, until later. But, in things that I was in, say football or the marching band and things like that, I could pretty much
Excuse me.
hold the crowd of people that I knew and be the funny guy in the room. So I think that's probably where it gets its beginnings, is just making those around me laugh or happy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got into theater when I was in high school, and I mean that bug bit me and bit me hard, and I had started playing music around then too. So around the time I was doing plays and going out on commercial calls and things like that. I was also playing in a band, and so though I actually started out as a drummer, so another
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing that happened was I really didn't like being back there. I if there's a microphone, my tour manager says this all the time. If there's a microphone in the room, I'm gonna find a way to get on it. And he's not really wrong. I do like to. Like I said, it's something that making people laugh, making people smile. It's just somehow it's just in me. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I would definitely say just playing in bands when I was younger and acting.
Yeah, it's fascinating how all that goes. What did you play in band?
I was a drummer in the band as well, so I started playing drums when I was 13, and was a drummer in marching band and in
That's
concert.
what I was. That's what I was wondering. In marching
Yeah.
band, you were doing.
Marching band, I played timpani in the orchestra all through junior high and all through high school, and then marching band, I played the snare drum and played in the bands that I was in, I was behind the drum set until I was about 17, and just as luck, pretty much the way that my life happens, it's just sort of like it just arranges itself to where our bass player could play drums, and we had a friend that played bass, but we couldn't find a singer. So I was just like, I'll try it, and I never in my life thought that I would be a singer, and there I was, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that come from? And I'm hearing some of your story, but where does the boldness come from that you go, I'll try singing?
Yeah, I don't know.
Some people are scared to death to do that.
It's funny. I don't. This is what's crazy about me. And again, I'll throw to my wife again, who knows me better than anybody, and will say this. There are certain things that I'm just not comfortable with. I don't like. I'm actually not an outgoing individual. I'm really not. I'm pretty reserved. If you don't know me, I'm pretty shy. I don't like returning things at stores or asking for help at a store or anything like that, or talking to the mechanic about what's wrong with my car. Like those kind of things, I am just a shell around me, and whatever, and and then for some reason, it's just when it comes to a stage or a microphone or being in some sort of comedy skit or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even get nervous. Like it's just something. And I can't really explain it. My biological father was a musician and a radio personality and an entertainer, and my mom definitely doesn't have a shy bone in her body. So maybe it's hereditary, and maybe I'm just a product of George Carlin. I don't know. It's one or the other.
So is there not because this is fascinating, is there not a sense of concern of failure? So you get up and sing, and if it doesn't work, then you just move to the next thing.
That's a really interesting thing. I think at first there is, but what I've managed to do in my career, and if you know Bowling for Soup, you know how I handle things. And so I can mess up a guitar solo in the middle of a show, and I'll just stop the show, call myself out on it, and then be like, let the audience vote. Like, should I try it again? And we'll go from there. And so really, I think less than worrying about failing, I more embrace the fact that failure is going to happen, and just incorporate that into things. I mean, obviously, I have done things on stage that I'm embarrassed about. I one time in front of a lot of people, I was playing, but I couldn't hear myself, and I started singing a song in a step off, but I couldn't hear that I was off, so I sang a whole song completely out of key, and I was the only one that didn't know. So those kind of things are embarrassing to me, but they're so few and far between that you can't. Again, I find most of the time I find hiccups, and by
Wow.
hiccup I mean like some sort of a stumble in something I'm doing. I can find the comedy in it, and I've been able to do that really since I was a kid.
Well, yeah, it's fascinating because I've met people in this business that are perfectionists,
Mm-hmm.
and it really doesn't work.
Yeah,
It really is hard to do that. If
yeah,
you can't, I don't want to say laugh at yourself, but understand that we're all gonna make mistakes
sure.
and just,
Yeah. Yeah, even from a perfectionist standpoint, I like things to be good. I mean, I think a lot of people would say that Bowling Pursuit doesn't take ourselves very serious. It's actually the opposite. We take ourselves serious. We're just not a serious band. I'm not a serious performer. Um, and so I think, with all of that, for me, it's like even like recording and things like that, where so many artists get held up on, oh, this isn't good enough. We got to do it again. We got to do it again. To me, a lot of times that takes the feeling out of it. It takes the organicness or the natural aspect of what it is you're doing out of it. And I'm the same way with voiceover too. Like and singing. To me, sometimes the imperfect performances are better because it has a personality to it. Once you sit there and you do something over and over and over again, you start to sound like a robot. Not always, but a lot of times that translates that way. And that's the way that we hear it. So, I'm really good about. I think this turn is to my detriment as well, though.
Okay.
But I am good at going, hey, that's good enough. I'm putting that away. The problem is that, like, let's say somebody's like, okay, but we want to change this one thing or this one word or whatever. I'm like, I already did that. Like I want to move on to the next thing. And so herein lies the issue with me being a little bit relaxed in that kind of thing. But I would say that I'm definitely not a perfectionist, but I I want to make a good quality product, no matter how silly it is what I'm doing.
Well, it's interesting. I've been a fan of Bowling for Soup for a long time, and I love your work. And across the board, what I feel about it, and I think why I love it so much, is because it's fun.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely fun. I've been singing Ohio, Come Back to Texas for a long time,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
1985 and all that.
Yeah.
They have energy. They feel authentic. Meeting you here, it feels like what I hear from the music.
Yeah.
And same with these other projects that we're going to talk about here in a minute. Where does that come from? It seems like it's almost a goal of you all to have fun in that energy and the positivity of it.
Band started, and we realized quickly that part of our show. I mean, we started in '94. We realized that part of our show was a different side of things than just the music. As
Okay.
our performance is there's a lot of ad lib, there's a lot of comedy involved in it. There's just a lot of talking about our day or messing with each other or this and this and this. And to me, that found its way into the music. And for us as a group, it's always the rule. There's been one rule ever. It's like when this isn't fun anymore, we'll stop doing it. And when it got to be tough for us, and around 2012, 2013, there's a lot of things happening in our lives that made it difficult. We took a break, and it's the best thing we ever did because when we came back, we're firing on all cylinders and we're back again. But I very rarely am in a state of mind to not write fun songs. Again, during that time, we made a record called Lunch Drunk Love, and I was going through a lot of personal stuff, and so was our bass player. And so that record kind of isn't as happy, and so it sort of just shows itself. It shows like, okay, well, they're human beings as well, and our fan base got it because everybody has bad days, but for the most part, we like being that band that when you've had a tough day at work, you come home and you put on a Bowling for Soup album, and you just smile, and
Right.
it can take a breakup or a bad day or an argument with your boss, and because our songs include all of that stuff, and it sort of makes it and it twists it to be like, maybe it's not that bad.
Yeah, I've always been curious about this. As you're talking about the album and when you were going through a tough time, is it like therapy, basically, to write about things that you're going through?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. So as I said, I'm not, and it took me a while to be able to put like actual meaning into lyrics. So if you listen to early Bowling Pursuit records, people will go, "Is this real?" And I'll be like, "It's kind of real, but really, it's just I just thought about this girl in high school and I just made up this story." Whereas now, when you hear something, for the most part, it's usually based upon either reality or loosely on a situation or whatever. So the answer to your question is yes. It took a while to get there. It took a while for me, as far as like a songwriter, to be able to put that part of myself out there. Um, and this sounds funny coming from a guy that writes silly songs most of the time. And I get that, but quite frankly, there's a depth to what I do that you probably don't hear unless you need it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I found is the best connection that I can have with Bowling Pursuit fans, is like when I write something and they're like, "Oh, okay, well, wait a minute, this is what he meant there." Like, okay, yeah, this is the dude's been through some stuff. And but yeah, it's definitely a therapeutic thing to be able to put it into the world, and more, I think, equally as therapeutic for people to react to it.
Well, it probably brings a closer connection
Yes,
between you and the fans.
100%, absolutely, yeah, and that's key. And again, one of those things that I think keeps our fan base so loyal, through all these 27 years in, and doing bigger shows than we ever have. Um, that definitely shows a loyalty, and I think a lot of that is, as you said, you don't know me, but if you meet me and you've heard the songs, you kind of will walk up to me and go, "Oh, you're like just that guy," like that's who you are.
Right.
You hear me singing and talking on the albums, and that's just who I am. I write like I talk.
Which is probably a compliment.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I definitely don't. None of my guys, we never have. No, you're kind of not allowed to have an ego in this band. You can't put on face. Like, I have bad days just like anybody, but I also understand that if you're going to approach me at Starbucks, that it took at least something inside you to kick you in the butt and make you come up to me and talk to me. I would never make you feel like that was a bad decision, because I hear too many horror stories about that. So regardless of how I feel or what is going on, you're getting, as up as I can possibly be. That's what you're gonna get, and I'm aware of that. And quite frankly, I've met people who are famous, that I think probably could take that advice as well. Like I said, everybody has bad days, but I think it's important that someone who I think it's important that when you put yourself out there, you give your best self all the time. And quite frankly, I know that that's very difficult for some people too.
No, I love that. I've gone through that. I was 23 years old when I started doing Barney, and one of the first things I did, they took me to a hospital, and I saw all these sick kids and these things, and I learned very quickly at that age the responsibility of that. Just what you're saying, that they didn't come. In my case, they didn't come to see me, and so I can't be sad, or yes, I'm a human being and all that stuff, but that's something I got to deal with before or after.
Yeah.
But when you're there, you're there to be that up and positive person. So I love you saying that, because it can be hard, and I get that, if you've had a long day or a bad day or those things, but it really is important for someone that's so excited to see you.
You're so right, and I think the hospital thing puts it into perspective. I mean, I've done a lot of that, obviously more back in the day when our songs were huge, and
Right.
And I try not to ever say no to anything like that I can possibly do. And it is good perspective. It is like, and to me, I think any sort of appearance like that where you're we've done several Make-A-Wish things, and those, where you're just like, man, I mean, this person, the smile on their face is because of this thing that I create, or this thing that I do, or this thing that I said. Like, man, I need to check myself. Like, I just stubbed my toe today, or I've got road rage. It's like, those things do help to put that in perspective. And that's the extreme, obviously. But again, I try and be, again, I'm not gonna go out of my way to, like I said, in a restaurant to make myself seen.
Right.
So I'm not there to be noticed, but once you notice, if you do notice me and you want to come up and say something or have a photo with me, you will get the absolute 100% best treatment possible.
That's because I've gone through the Make-A-Wishes as well, and it's the most unbelievable experience. But you
Yeah.
also remember, I toured for 5 years with Barney, and it's sold out audiences every night, and you realize what it took for them to get there, right?
Yeah.
Kids got up at 5 in the morning and woke the parents up and all that stuff. And for you, it's a lot to get to a show and to go do those things.
Yeah.
And it's worth every dime for a fan if the people that you go see are like that.
100%. Absolutely.
I love that. I'm curious, where'd the songwriting come from?
Well, the songwriting, I think, comes from riding in the car with my parents as a kid. I mean, I'm 49, so we didn't have Walkman or a way to escape. What you listen to is what they played in the front seat, and so that was a lot of bands that wrote amazing stories and amazing songs. The Eagles, Willie Nelson, Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton, Neil Diamond. And then even into like Donna Summer and the Supremes and things like that. And so that was the soundtrack to, because we couldn't really afford to fly, and so we were in the car a lot. And my grandparents lived an hour and a half away, and we visited them quite often. And so I think that's the basis of it all. And then when I discovered music, again, I was a drummer, and really I put the pressure on everybody else to write songs. I really didn't know how to do it. I didn't play like an actual guitar or musical instrument. So when I picked up a guitar, finally, I guess I was probably 19. I picked it up to write songs. I didn't know how to play it, so I'm completely self-taught, and I started writing songs the day I started learning how to play the guitar. And the way I write is, like I said, back into those old country ways and their stories. And I like there to be a beginning and an end, and I like there to be a turn in there that sort of makes it to where it's like, oh, I see what you did, that kind of thing. But it wasn't something that I didn't have any of that around me as a kid or anything like that. I wasn't exposed to it. It just really, well, like I said, I found my biological father, or who he was anyway, a few years ago, and turns out he was a songwriter when he was a kid, and so maybe there's something to be said for, again, nurture and nature.
So it was fun. I got to tell my stepdaughter that you were going to be on.
Yeah.
I had been hearing Phineas and Ferb's theme song.
Yeah.
That's just stupid.
Yeah.
You just mentioned it, and she sings the whole.
Oh, God, it's just worst theme song I've ever seen.
Whole thing.
Yeah. It's probably one of the greatest theme songs of all time. Yeah.
No, it's not. For me, it's just. And if you check out Phineas and Ferb Exposed, I'll link in the description below. It was just terrifies me. But it was just the good exposed video I've ever looked at. It was very hilarious to watch. Continue on.
And I'm very, very lucky to have been a part of that whole thing.
So where does that come from?
Yeah, Phineas and Ferb is, again, as I said earlier, my life tends to just sort of work itself out. But Dan Povenmire, Swampy Marsh, created that show on a napkin in a restaurant.
They needed to get back into Family Guy or Symptoms, whatever. Continue.
Both of those guys had been writers on The Simpsons together.
Okay.
Wow. But you need to get back to doing that.
And in the Simpsons writer room, Bowling for Soup was a very popular band, and Dan was a huge fan. Well, Dan went on to be one of the original directors and animators on Family Guy, and then
which is good idea.
Created Rocco's Modern Life.
That's a good idea.
And they came back together to start this Phineas and Ferb. Well,
that is stupid!
This song was written, and again, I had the job before I ever even knew it. Like, they were like, okay, they're in their meetings with Disney, and it's like, hey, here's this theme song, and we want Jarrett Reddick from Bowling for Soup to sing it. Yeah. But little did I know it would go dig deeper than that, because eventually they wanted Disney was like, okay, where's the rest of the song? And they're like, oh no, there's no rest of the song. This is what we have. And so they brought me in and said, hey, here's the theme. We want you to sing it, but can you turn this into like a 3-minute song? And I'm like, sure. Yeah, that's not a problem. So
this is stupid. Excuse my language. Fuck. Continue on.
I did, and while I was there, I got to read for a part on the show. I read for the part of Swampy, the drummer for Love Handle, but I actually got cast as Danny, the singer for Love Handle, which is great because I got lines in, pretty much every season. And it ended up being great. They after that, we had a relationship, and I had an open door policy the whole time that the show was going on. I could go in and write a song every time I was in LA. So I got to write like Izzy's Got the Frizzies and several other songs for the thing. I wrote with them. I wrote Robot Riot, which is I got to write and sing Robot Riot, which is actually Love Handle actually performs in the movie, and so just great experiences all around there with those guys. And such a smart television show. I think.
Hell no.
It's one of the things that I'm most proud of, and it has nothing to do with me, is that, my friends will be like, oh my God, that's like the only show that my kids watch that I can actually stand. Like it's actually funny and the music is good. And I'll always be like, yeah, that's how it was designed, but I had zero to do with that at all.
Well, yeah, it's funny. Obviously, I've been in this industry a long time.
Oh, and I respect you guys' opinion on Phineas and Ferb, but for me, it's just not my thing. And for me, it just sucks. And just one of those things that just terrifies me. It's just, I hate the show. I just hate the It's just, why? Continue on.
And doing this show, I've had all kinds of people from children's TV and anime and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting. We've got a 15 and a 17-year-old here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting what they connect to and what they don't connect. They actually weren't Barney fans, funny enough.
Yeah, that's pretty late. That's pretty late for them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little late. Yeah.
Well, my daughter is 18, and we did the Barney videos. I mean, that's like we did the me and my Teddy getting all ready. So that video that one was on, man, we watched that a lot. But yeah, my son is 15 and never. Yeah, he really wasn't a TV kid. But I see what you're saying. I think
it's funny, and that song. I mean, the second I mentioned you and I mentioned Finny, she just and just kept going. And every time I see her, I'm like, yeah, today it's it just meant something to her. Her mother smiled about it. This is just fascinating to me that you're given a little piece. Can you do 3 minutes? Like, sure.
Yeah.
And it turns into what it turns into.
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest show in the world for 9 years. I was able to. It's crazy. I wrote the full length song, and then they ended up animating that whole song into one episode. And Bowling for Soup is actually in there playing the song.
Yeah,
and so I mean, it's crazy. Again, relationships and opportunity are just one of those things where you've got to get in there and mean it. And I almost didn't go to that meeting. I was out really late the night before in LA, and quite frankly, I had done Jimmy Neutron, the theme song to Jimmy Neutron, the movie.
It was a good example. Yes, good idea. Continue on.
And I'd been to a ton of these meetings. Like I'd been to all of these things, and I've tried. I've written this, and I've written that, and I've written that. And I was just kind of like, okay, I've got a new record coming out. I think I just want to chill. Like I don't even know. My manager was like, The car is there. Get in the car right now. And I am so glad I did because, Dan and Swampy, and then Jay Stutler, who is the head of, or I think he's higher up now, but he was head of animation music at the time. Just such a kind soul. And all of them are just such great people. I'm so glad that I got to meet them and have them, and have them in my life now. But also just to be a part of the whole thing, and you just never know. This is a great, you're interested in this kind of thing. This is one of the things that when I tell people this, it makes it make sense. When I went in for this meeting, they shared an offer.
Hold on. Be right back. Sorry about that, everyone. I just came back, and all of a sudden, look what happened. One of my Funko Pops just dropped accidentally with let's just say, drop and just put on my whatever it was, like say, cloth, my dresser. Excuse me. I don't know what happened here. It's just, I just don't want it to happen again. I don't know, just like Morgan just slammed the door and just suddenly be like, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what happened. Just, it felt like it's going to happen again. Like, boom. Like, while I was doing a middle reaction video. Like, what's going on? Okay. Enough said. Continue on.
About the size of, like maybe a 10 by 10. And they were like desks up against each other. And they had one secretary. And so they, there was like one poster coming this spring or whatever. The next time I went in there, they had half that floor. The next time I went in there, they had moved them to another floor because they had a whole floor. And then 2 years later, they had to build an entire building for them. Like, that's how big that show was. I mean, obviously with Barney, like, it's the thing where I would go in and I would, like, I remember when they got macaroni and cheese, and I'm just like, guys, you got mac and cheese. Like, this is as big as it gets. And then the biggest one to me was, I go, you're on Band-Aids. Like, that is as big as it gets. You don't get any bigger than Band-Aids. And they were like, we can't believe it. We're on Band-Aids. And so, I think people put that in perspective. Like, if you get a fruit snack or mac and cheese or Band-Aids, like, that's as big as it gets. That's it.
Yeah, obviously we saw it. Creators of Barney were school teachers, and we were I was doing birthday parties back in the early days before we went on TV, and it's amazing to see that all of a sudden, TV, and then all these people were showing up, and we had Band-Aids too, so I understand how big it was.
I used to own a toy store actually when I was a kid. So when I was 17, I had a toy store, and I'll never forget when Talking Barney came out. It was like the hot toy that year, and I mean, it was like the Cabbage Patch Kid of that year, where like people were fighting over it and stuff.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of Toy Story difference from the whole Toy Story you collected. Al's Toy Barn. Continue on.
It's nuts. But anyway, that's my Barney connection.
Where did the Toy Story store come from?
So that was in Wichita Falls, Texas. My girlfriend's dad had this little thing that he was just doing for fun on the weekends, and I was just selling bicycles and skateboards, and I got into it with him, and we ended up opening up a store and had it for several years, until pretty much Nintendo kind of put us out of business. It was like kids really didn't want skateboards and bikes for a few years, and electronics, you can't really compete as a mom and pop in that world, as most people would understand. The category killers just come in and just they sell. Walmart will come in and sell all the games it costs, and then make $10 on the machine, and they're fine with all of that. You can't really. But yeah, that's a whole different lifetime.
Wow.
There's so many places to go.
I know. It's crazy.
Which I absolutely, because it's fascinating to me with this business. The two things are, you kind of have to do like you've done, which is jump out there, because it's just kind of hard to find your way, and then you also have to be very flexible, which you've done as well, going bowling the soup and these different things you've done. Had you done voiceover before Phineas and Ferb, or was that the first one?
I had done a few things. Yeah, I I had done a few commercials and things like that, and I knew that I had flexibility with my voice just for acting and stuff. Um, so I knew that it was a world that would that would suit me. And as at the time when Phineas and Ferb came out, voiceover was still kind of the unexplored territory. So A-listers really didn't want to touch it. So when I got Phineas and Ferb and I started to go on other reads, like I actually had a chance at jobs. And then as the world began to change and, the stigma of voiceover kind of changed with, Jack Black and some of these A-listers starting to do movies.
Wow.
Just the scope of the business changed really, really rapidly. And so
Yeah, maybe a devil or something. Continue on.
Sudden I'm up against Jack Black or Charlie Day or people who have the same sort of flexibility and highness to their voice that I had.
Yeah.
And so I got pretty tired of it really quick and was pretty much done. In fact, I had an agent, and then I didn't want an agent anymore, so I got out of that. And then that's when Chucky came calling, and just like I said, it's very, very strange how things line up.
Wow.
That's the perfect segue to this, because I definitely want to talk a lot about Chuck E. Cheese. That Chucky's been around since '77, and
Wow.
Was it Showbiz Pizza at one point, and
yeah, it's a crazy story in that Showbiz and Chucky actually were competitors, and
Wow.
Showbiz actually won the fight, but liked the mascot better. So Showbiz actually bought Chuck E. Cheese and then adopted Chucky as the mascot. So Showbiz's guy they were the Pizza Time Theater, and it was Billy Bob. He was like a big bear. And that's what we had in my hometown. And then my grandparents had Chuck E. Cheese. So I had both of them in my life as a kid. But yeah, Chuck E. Cheese to me historically, a lot of nostalgia there for me. I mean, it's pretty crazy the tie-in. I mean, I went there all the time when I spent the summers with my grandma or spring break or whatever. We used to have our victory parties there in 8th grade with football. And then Bowling Pursuit filmed our very first music video in a Chuck E. Cheese. And, that's many, many years before there would be any sort of inkling of me being him, So life's weird, it's super weird.
But it isn't. And you probably, I don't know if you know, that we have a huge connection here. So many of the Barney people were involved in it. Bob West was Pasquale, the original voice of Barney. Duncan was there to do it before you. Stephen White, one of our writers, was involved in that. It seems like when I was doing my early days of promotion for Barney, I always ran to Chuck E. Cheese because we were both in Texas, all over all these events. So there's a huge connection here. And I know Eric Neal, very good friends with Eric.
Yeah, totally. Eric's good dude.
Yeah, which, by the way, I did a reaction video of it 2 episodes ago. Continue on.
Awesome. He's awesome. So, what is it like when you get a phone call about being Chuck E. Cheese?
Man, I mean, so the way that it went down was I got a call, a friend of a friend. He basically called me and he said, "Hey, this is crazy random, but what do you think about the opportunity of being Chuck E. Cheese?" Now, this guy has nothing to do with entertainment and none of, so it was just one of those things where I'm just like, okay, but I mean, he's tied in enough to the world where I was like, I guess this is serious, Well, it turns out that his next door neighbor knew that he knew me, gauged my interest. His next door neighbor is named Bill Cochran. And Bill Cochran worked for Richards Group, which is a huge advertising agency here in Dallas at the time. And Bill got the account to revamp Chuck E. Cheese and to literally just take it, and it was time to redo him. He'd been, I think, I don't know the specifics of this, but I know Duncan had been him for like 20 years. I don't think they had really changed the mascot in a long time. I think it was just let's modernize this guy.
Yes.
And so little did I know, but this was always happening because Bill had seen me do improv comedy and liked my band and knew that I had the flexibility with my voice. He knew that I could sing. He knew how I sang and all this. And so this mouse is sort of being built with my mannerisms, like how he plays the guitar and all this. And I have no idea this is going on. They made a reel of me in interviews and me doing random things off the internet and pitched me to Chuck E. Cheese. I still have no idea any of this is going on. So
Wow.
the first time I set eyes on any of these folks, I knew Bill from improv comedy, but I didn't know what he did outside of that. And so my first time in, I go in and I'm like, yeah, hey, and they're like, yeah, jump in the studio, let's go. Me and my manager think I'm in my audition, right?
Mhm.
So I go in and I'm like, they're like, well, how do you think you would say this? And from this world, it took me about a year to really get him down, like what he's gonna say and when. And now they don't even really direct me all that much anymore. It's like how he's gonna say it. But back then, I'm still trying to figure out what his voice is and where it sits here, and all that.
Mhm.
And so I am walking out of the room after it's over, and they're like, "Hey, thanks. Yeah, we'll need you back in about 3 months. We'll cut the winter show." And I'm like, "All right." And I've got a text from my manager to call me after the audition. I call him and I go, "Hey man," and he's like, "Hey, how was the audition?" I go, "Well, I don't think I auditioned. I think I just cut commercials actually, and I'm pretty sure I just did the first show in the restaurant." He's like, "We don't even have a contract yet." I'm like, "I know. I don't know what's happening here, but that's true."
Oh.
That was in May, and we didn't actually, I wasn't actually signed on to be him until July of that year. So it was very, very quick, very weird. And again, I had been sold to the company just based upon my personality in interviews and my voice, the way that I sing.
It's fascinating. Well, I've seen all this craziness over the years on a lot of how this goes down, and I've seen that part as well. Um, Bernie went through several different voices when Bob left, and then had to replace. So I have seen that aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fascinating where it goes through, and in fact that happened with us when I was doing the TV show. They brought someone new in, and I had no idea. I started hearing these rumors like, "Is there someone else coming?" They're like, "Yeah, we haven't introduced you yet, but we're bringing someone else in." So some of that craziness does happen.
Yeah.
And on that point, do you go back at all and listen to the others? Do you watch what they've done, or do you just come in with totally something?
No, I came in just totally new. I mean, I knew enough about, Chucky and like the way that he had sounded for several years and sort of like his accent and all of that. But this was all just new, and they really wanted me to make it my own. And I don't know, again, I didn't know Duncan, and I don't know, any of the how all of that stuff in the background worked out. I don't know any of that stuff. In fact, I didn't even know that it was going on until, as you know, there's a very uh, a very excitable fan base for Chuck E. Cheese, and probably I'm thinking Barney as well. So when there are changes or whatever, they definitely make things known. And so until all of that really started to stir up, and people sort of kind of pick sides or whatever, which nobody really ever said anything bad about me. It was more just like, well, we like him, he's great. We just, what happened to the other guy, that kind of thing. But I came in and I sort of already had a vision of how I wanted him to sing, which is just me, but with like a little bit. I mean, originally it was, so again, it's been 9 years. So 9 years ago, the songs, it sounded a little bit more like me singing. Now his voice is a little bit higher. And then the way that he talks is just what my best friend calls my people voice. It's like if you were walking, if I know you and you walk in the room, I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" And that's just basically Chuck E. Cheese,
Right.
But no, they were amazing, and the first couple of things that we did really kind of gave me a chance to find his flexibility and his personality, because the first things that we did were like super excited, like every kid's a winner and these kind of things like that. But then they started doing these commercials where they were like talking to the moms, like, "Hey, this thing that you're doing for your kids is really cool. It's cool that you bring them here." And so I got to do this toned down sort of thing with him, and that really. It's funny when I hear actors talk like this, because I'm usually going, "What are you talking about?" But that's really when he became real to me, where I was just like, okay, this is what he would say and how he would say it in this particular situation. And so that when you hear actors talking like this, it really is real. I always thought it was, they were making stuff up as well, but he exists to me, and the way that he says things, he reads things, and Matt Daniel, who is the creative guy at Chuck E. Cheese, who's Eric's buddy, and they write the songs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He more often than not he will sit back and go, "How would Chucky say this?" And I'll do it, and he'll go, "Yep, you're right." And so, yeah, it's been great, and I just love it. And the nostalgic aspect of it is, again, it's literally like a dream come true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, I totally understand the fan base and how they go with those.
Yeah.
But I gotta think you had with the Phineas and Ferb, that had to give you a lot of
Stupid, by the way.
cred coming in.
Yeah, I had the street cred coming in for sure, and the fact that I was actually already a bona fide rock star, in their eyes and stuff. I mean, that was cool. Again, I didn't read anything negative about me. It was more of just like, why are they changing, or like what we like, or and I definitely see that. I like the old guy better, or I think Bob was the best, or Duncan's the best, or you're the best, and honestly, everything is a progression to whatever's next. I'm not. I mean, one of these days I won't even be on the planet, so somebody else will be Chuck E. Cheese, and you can only hope that I've added something, to the character, to the fans, and to the lives of these kids that really like to go there and see this guy dance and give out tickets. I don't take it for granted. I'm super. Again, we talked a little bit earlier about just the responsibility of even just walking down the street. I mean, I get what my responsibility when I'm the mouse, what that is, and within what realm I can operate.
I've talked to Eric about this before, and we talked about it with Barney. Barney really only was entertaining kids, little kids. That we never really went for the adult audience.
Can you excuse me real quick? Because I need to wear some glasses. Be right back. That, folks, sorry about that. I'm just lost my computer glasses somewhere. But anyway, let's continue on.
It was really just for the kids. And then there's other kids shows like Sesame Street that do a little bit of both. And so you guys are doing that as well. Is that the balance of that? Not to go too adult, but not to be so kid because the parents are obviously going with the kids to see these things and all that. Where is that balance?
I think it's super important, and to me that comes into Eric and Matt and just the smartness of what it is they write. Matt writes most of the skits, and he and Eric work on the songs together. There's a couple of other writers. It's just smartly written in that it's engaging for kids and entertaining for adults. And again, that sort of goes back to that whole Phineas and Ferb thing, to where
which is stupid. Continue on.
I think that there's aspects of things to where you're in some sort of situation where there's a mascot or there's somebody that's talking to you that could kind of get in your ears and sort of drive you crazy. And I feel like they've done a really good job of Chucky not being that way. And I'm not saying that he ever was. I'm just saying that when I go in there, like, it can be sort of in the background if you want it to be, or you can pay attention to it if you want to. And, it's not like, again, I don't feel like parents go in there just going, oh my gosh, I've got to hear, sit through this.
Wow.
And if you sit down and you watch the skits, if you watch the YouTube things, they're entertaining. I mean, we did on Fridays we did live streams through the whole, through that part of the pandemic when that was what was happening and the restaurants weren't open and all of that. And they made them very, very, they made it to where adults would really just want to sit down and watch it with their kids, and I think that's important. That's what we're doing these days, right? We're trying to be engaged with our children.
Right, Dylan. I love that. I love that. So the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to another area.
Yeah,
what we can here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so I a friend of mine, was that I met through my wife's dad, actually, was just a big podcast fan. And, it was before I even listened to podcasts. And he would just listen to me talk and all the time just go, you've got to have a podcast. You've got to have a podcast. I'm, okay, well, I have one. He's like, no. I have a Bowling for Soup podcast that I would just do like every 6 months or whatever. Not like that. Like, you need to do one where you're You do it every week, and here's the thing. So you need a theme. And anyway, his name's Rich. He was the original co-host. He came up with Jarrett Goes to the Movies, and we started doing it 6 years ago. We're almost 300 episodes in.
Wow.
And essentially, we watch a movie and we talk about it. But the cast is 5 people: my wife, our friend Amy, our friend Eric, Sean the producer, and myself. Is that 6 people? 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know. Anyway, that's how many people it is.
Right.
Wow.
And a lot of times we just get off on tangents and talking about our lives and talking about this or our kids and stuff like that. So it really has grown into its own thing. There's a movie associated with it, but you don't necessarily have to have watched the movie to be there.
Yes.
And then actually my most successful podcast, I started a couple of years ago with my drummer. We were in his mom's swimming pool, sitting there having a drink and talking, and we were talking about our kids. And we looked at one another and just like, this is a show. This is, with just our friend group, we could just get people on and talk about something that they don't normally get to talk about.
Right.
People don't get, especially actors and rock stars and things like that, asking about their kids really isn't a thing. So let's get people and get them on here talking about parenting and talking about, just what it's like raising kids in this and through the pandemic and all this. So Rockstar Dad's been going strong now, and listenership is it's crazy. And so that's another weekly one that we do. And I like it. I like the podcast thing. You get used to it. You just sort of talking to nobody.
Yeah.
I kind of got asked to do one, and the reaction was pretty big, and I thought, maybe I'll try, and next thing you know, and it's fascinating, and it's you meet new people and you learn things.
Right.
I just love that. I love the connection. I love meeting people and having the, as we're talking about the responsibility and all of those things. I think it's really cool when you realize that other people have gone through the same experience.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I think, it's a really cool, and it allows me to open up another window into, me. I'm pretty open. I most of the things outside of, Phineas and Chuck E. Cheese can, are usually not.
Yeah, that Phineas thing, we'll be doing that. Continue on.
That safe for little kids.
Right.
But that's what that is. That's who I am, and that's what we get to talking about, and that's the audience that's listening to us. So yeah, it's a nice little outlet, and honestly, just another reason for my drummer and I to hang out, because we pretty much are together. If we're not, when we're touring, we're roommates. We're always together. Then when we're on the road, we're playing golf or meeting, and so it's just one other reason for us to spend 2 hours a week together.
Well, and I love it. I do a show for Patreon with a buddy of mine from the Barney tour, and we talk about what it was like touring and all that stuff, and it's kind of the same thing for us. We love telling the old stories.
Which I was not in, because I was not $10 a month. I was $5 a month at the time. Carrie Sisson was host with Matt Bailey was Live with the Parole, which I'm not planning to react to, which is a no-no. But, however, it was called Live with Purple Row, which is, I was watching some episodes, not reacting to them on LJPCBM ads, which is a good thing, but I'm just like, it's probably a good thing I'm not going to react to the Patreon exclusive episodes of Purple Roads. That's a no-no. And it's just, the thing is, I would love to sneak peeks videos. And that's a good thing for me. Continue on.
Sure, yeah, that's just it. It's the hardship stories too. I love telling stories from the road, like before things got good. But I tell this all the time. It's like the war stories that come up are almost always pre-tour bus, pre-hit. Just because you're out there and just absolutely under the in the elements and surviving. And I'm sure that's what it was like the early day of those tours. Too.
Yeah.
We just got to get from city to city and pull this off.
That's exactly. We'd be out 9 months out of the year. And it's just
wow.
Cities, like a Broadway show, 7 shows a week. And even though it was a kids show, we had all rock and roll roadies,
Yeah.
Rolling Stones and all that stuff, and it was almost like a rock show for kids.
Yeah.
And it was just go go go. So yeah, it's survival.
When you're in the suit and you're like dancing and stuff like that, are you singing the songs and stuff so that it like gels with your manners, or are you just kind of in there just kind of doing the thing that you're doing?
No, I have to move the mouth. So I'm like a full puppeteer, a full body suit puppeteer. So it's pretty, it's pretty intense, especially when you're in something that's oh my God, almost 7 feet tall with a tall guy, and then the weight behind it and a tail that can knock people over. So you
got to be blocking is super important, right? Especially could knock Baby Bop or BJ over easy, right? There's
when we did the TV show, we would do what we called Barney Camp, and we would bring all the kids in so they could see the costumes and meet us and do practice dances and teach them all that stuff.
Yes.
Because obviously you can't have a kid looking for a tail, or it's not gonna look very natural. So you go through those kind of things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's
so,
really cool.
What I'm just fascinated when you mentioned the pandemic. I mean, it sounds like you probably had to keep finding. You were doing all kinds of stuff, I'm guessing.
Everything in this room. I was in this room for. My wife said it was just like I was on tour, but I went to bed in the same bed with her. I wasn't going to my bunk. I did a lot of live streams from here. I raised a bunch of money for charity. Around $125,000 for different charities, and then I did some shows for myself to keep the rent paid, and again, we did a bunch of Chuck E. Cheese stuff that I could do from home back then. Both of my podcasts continued to go. We learned how to do those remotely, which just took about a week or so.
Right.
Managed to stay really busy actually, and I wrote a solo country record that's coming out in the next few weeks.
Very cool.
I wrote a new Bowling for Soup album that is coming out in April. I guested on more songs that I basically said yes to everything.
Yeah, and Phoenix the Verb Revival, which is, oh my God, it needs to shut up. Continue on.
Band asked me, like, you want to sing on this? I'm like, sure, I'll sing on that. But normally I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. And for some reason, COVID just opened me up to, let's go, but I had to keep myself busy. First couple of weeks of this, March of that year, we had a full calendar, and I, for the first time in my life, started watching things come off the calendar instead of going on it, and it was full on panic. It wasn't the money, it wasn't the sickness, it was really just the anxiety of like, what am I doing? Because I'm a calendar driven individual. It's like, even now, it's like, okay, I know when the next time I go on tour is. Here's the amount of time I have to spend with my family or get done what I need to do, and then I'm on tour, and then I come home, and then repeat. Well, here is just this open-ended thing of like, hey, I don't think you're going anywhere for 6 months. Hey, I don't think you're going anywhere for a year. Hey, I don't think you're going anywhere for a year and a half. And I just, wheels came off, and I was just like, okay, then I'm going to do all this other stuff. And I managed to make it through. Obviously I know that I don't want to talk about it as if it's past tense, because I know that we're still obviously dealing with it. I actually have COVID right now.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm one day before I get out, actually. So
Wow, okay. It's just, the thing is, I tested positive back in December 2020, but I was feeling better Christmas Day. It's just while I was taping this one, that was released on January last year, and it was terrifying. Continue on.
When Eric goes, hey, do you want to do this podcast? I say, yes, please. I'm looking for stuff to do. I'm locked in my upstairs, and I haven't seen anybody. I go down and fill up my water and take my meds. That's it.
Oh my gosh.
But
You're the first guest we've had that's had COVID.
I'm COVID. I'm COVID-y. I'm your first COVID-y guest. But like I said, downhill. I'm on the downhill slide. I get out. My drummer got out today, and then the rest of the band and crew, most of us have it, and we're all getting out in different days this week.
Well, because you have a show coming up.
I do. Yeah, I got a show Saturday in Dallas at the Kessler, and we will be fine. I get out tomorrow, which is Wednesday. I don't know when you'll release this,
Yep.
but
A little bit, but
yeah, I'll be out in time, and then continue on. We got podcasts coming up, and I'm excited to see people. I'm excited to see my father-in-law on Thanksgiving and watch some football with him. I've 2 weekends of watching football by myself is the weirdest thing in the world. So I'm ready. But yeah, man, I'm vaccinated, so I don't know, if you're watching this or listening, I don't know where you stand on that, but all I can say is that my case was very, very mild compared to a lot of things I hear about. So I take that and do with it whatever you'd like.
well, we're all vaccinated here as well, and I'm right with you, and this is a great example of that. So I'm glad to hear you're doing well, and yeah, I'm with you 1,000%.
Doing good. So when I got the antibodies as well, because when I got COVID, I went and get, so, and then 3 months I can get my booster. And I was texting with Dee Snider from Twisted Sister the other day.
Whoa! Whoa!
That was easy.
Exactly. Dee Snider for freaking Twisted Sister? I mean, this year was these not well these in the other Twisted, except for the fact that AOJ was not in the Rock and Roll Heavy Rail Hall of Fame, and boy, we were lucky, because at the time, yes, it's just Dee Snider was there. Boy, I was lucky. I saw so many Dee Snider videos on YouTube, and I got a lot of CDs related to Twisted Sister on my collection. Continue on. It's just like, God help me. Continue on.
Completely unrelated.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh yeah, I do that. He goes, I've done all that too. I get great 5G now. And I'm just like, yes, like we're all radioactive. But, I thought that was a really funny way to look at it.
You almost have to laugh through this. I mean, I'm also a photographer,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw my calendar disappear as well. The March of COVID.
Yeah.
And as a creative, it's the same thing. It's like, this podcast was going, and we had to figure out this is, Zoom is ended up being a great thing, and we
Sure.
do all this stuff, but everything was going, and then it just kind of stopped.
Yeah, it's again, I think for people who, being locked in the house is not for some people, and not interacting with people. And honestly, it sort of took me a minute. I don't know that I'm still over it. I mean, we've done a few things, and we've done a couple of tours and things, and I do all right. But there's definitely a time when it's like a little too many people for me, and it has nothing to do with the illness at all. It just,
Yeah.
my anxiety meter kind of starts to go, and there I am. And so I think that is definitely a direct result of just absolutely not being around anybody for so long. And maybe it's something that we get through, or maybe it's just something where I just have to change that particular behavior and not find myself in those situations, which is a little bit weird in my career choice, but we'll see. But yeah, we're doing okay. We're again much better than some. My neighbor, this is just a messed up story, but I feel like I should at least give it airtime since we're talking about it. He's a retired teacher. It's his first year for retiring from teaching. And so everybody's doing their first day of school pics. Well, he does his first day of school pic by his pool, and it's like the stereotypical, like his feet, what I'm talking about, like feet in a Corona or something. And the next day he went into the hospital. This was the beginning of school back in August. He just got home last week, and this was so. Again, man, we're very blessed here as far as how it's impacted us, and hope the best for everybody.
Absolutely, we are very blessed, and it's a shame. I mean, we got to the point. Like I said, we got a 15 and 17-year-old, and we were almost waiting.
Yeah.
and seeing them go, they did go back to school and wearing masks and all the things they had to do, and the social part was very difficult for them too. Because
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're locked in their house, and now you're at school, but you all have to wear a mask, and yeah, it's
Yeah, there's a whole class of kids that didn't get to go to prom, didn't get to walk the stage for graduation. I mean, those are things. Despite how important that is in your past, at least you got to do it. I mean, it's bizarre. Very
No.
bizarre.
we've got a kid that's in the marching band in Keller High, and last year they could play at the game, but they had to sit in the field, basically on outside the goal line of the goal post, and 6 feet apart and all of that. This year they could actually do competition.
Right.
Yeah, it's like nowadays you can't do things like that in the United States. For example, China has one now. Not all the countries except for China. So that's just me. Continue on.
And it was just so great to see them being, and obviously everything being safe, but
Right.
starting to get back is such a beautiful thing.
100%. Yeah, that's something that those are the best times of my life. It's outside of Bowling for Soup was marching band. So I hate all the stories of them missing any of that.
Yeah.
Competitions. Despite I was the long-haired kid and like I was already like a rocker, but so I didn't care, but I did.
Right.
And so I really cared a lot, but I acted like I didn't. And those are big, those are big days, and big camaraderie and good relationships. And I hope that they're getting to experience all that again. That's awesome.
It's very cool. Let me ask you a couple more things. One, we have a lot of people that watch this show that want to get into business.
Yeah.
Puppeteers or actors or all these things, and you've got so many good lessons from just trying things. I don't think no stops you.
Not me. No.
No.
In fact, to me, the word, to me, again, I talked a little bit about my high school girlfriend's dad, and he was my mentor, and I learned everything I know about most everything, working on things around the house and business from him. And his thing is it's the same with me. It's just what's the worst that can happen. Like I know a lot of people go by that. Well, you can't get a yes if you don't ask. But for me, it's like what's the worst that's going to happen? Because so if they said no, and I think I'm just going to do it anyway. And obviously, because I'm not talking about breaking laws or anything. I'm really just talking about motivation. Or like nothing's really going to stop me. From if I decide, I told these guys, I told Bowling for Soup, 1996, we played this show in Abilene, Texas.
Wow.
The first show we ever had where it was everybody singing every word to every song. We'd never experienced that before.
Wow.
And it had been a good few months as far as like starting to figure out what was happening. And we had a dressing room. It was, it's not really a dressing room. It was like a makeshift thing at some conference house or something. And I just said, I think I have this figured out. Like, I think we can do this. And they're like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, but you just have to trust me and like do everything I say to do. And I think we can do it. And we did. And that's accurate. That's exactly what happened. And, it took several years, it took till 2003 before we could actually afford to pay rent. But
Yes.
heck, we did it, And so I think that's, I think the main thing is you have to be driven. You have to be persistent. And, this day and age, so much of it is just about relationships. So be around it as much as you can. If you like, as you said, I don't know much about the puppeteer world, but I do know that if you're not around other puppeteers, you're never going to get gigs.
No.
So be around it. Just ask to help, all of that stuff. Volunteer to just move the puppets inside or whatever it is. And the same is true with music. If you want to be a musician, you need to go to shows and you need to meet bands and you need to meet artists and you need to develop friendships and meet club owners and bartenders and door guys and merch people and all of that. You got to develop those relationships so that you can't get a gig at this particular spot until they need somebody and you're the person they think of.
Right.
And So all of those things ring true, even with social media these days. You know, those things are all the same. And then there's the social media aspect of which, you know, is sort of equivalent to what touring used to be for bands. You have to spend your day building your social media, building your streams. That's the new thing, you know, and then build out your crowds regionally if you're in a band. And voice acting, you have to take a class, even if you don't think you need it.
Exactly.
Because you don't know this business, even if you think you do. And even if you've lucked out on a couple of jobs, you don't know anything. You need to go take a class, and then take another class, and then take another class. And what that's doing too is also you're meeting people. You're learning from what they're doing. You're learning from their mistakes. You're learning from their triumphs. And you just locked in a studio sending out random auditions. It can work. I'm sure it can work, but it's not gonna. So that would be 100% my advice for the voiceover thing is take a class and take another class and you know, do it.
I love it. I love it. And one more thing. What's next?
Well, for me, like I said, I got a new country album coming out. So everything I do, JarrettReddick.com. JarrettReddick.com, JARET2113 everywhere except TikTok. I'm just Jarrett Reddick. Bowling for
We'll
Soup.
put those links. We'll put all that stuff out there for you too.
Thank you. BowlingForSoup.com. New single is out now. It is not safe for work or your kids, but it is 100% pertinent to things that are going on in the world. So if you don't mind a little adult language, by all means, listen to the new single called "Kill 'Em with Kindness." And if you would rather be more kid friendly, go back to Getting Old Sucks and everybody's doing it because we actually have puppets in our video. And yeah, touring and playing shows and podcasts, all that's at JarrettReddick.com and BowlingForSoup.com. And man, I just appreciate this conversation. It's been a lot of fun.
Hey, thank you so much. I have just enjoyed. I haven't stopped smiling. I've enjoyed talking to you and hearing your stories. It's been so great having you on the show.
Thank you, man. Well, I will come back anytime you need me, Carrie.
Well, thank you. You say that. I'm going to call you.
Hey, come on, do it. I learned very early not to put stuff into the world if you didn't want it to happen. So that's why I never ask anybody if they need help moving.
That's good advice. That's good advice.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Jerry.
Hey, man. Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching Purple Roads. Remember to keep your eyes, ears, and heart open, and you'll find your Purple Road. We'll see you next week.
So that was Purple Roads, episode 91. Jarrett Reddick from Phineas and Ferb, Chuck E. Cheese and Bowling for Soup. It was meh. I'm sorry, but that is Phineas and Ferb was not my favorite show of all time. It sucks. But the other ones were good. You know, that's just me. And that was LJPCBM episode number 1168. Hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned. The next one's going to be LJPCBM episode number 169, which will be about my reaction video to Purple Rose episode number 92. It's going to be children's shows for kids. Songs for kids. Anyway. Till next time, so Joseph Bible, so baby, good work, GS, Phil, to visit out. See ya.
Given unto me this life I'll never take for granted, and given all the time I failed to really understand it, I never sought to meet the maker of reality, the one who gave the life that which is always happening, but I tried all the time. Why was I the one to see things as I do under the moonlight and the sun? Perception is the question, and the giver holds the key.